A real temptation for a newly assigned manager is to tackle the biggest problem facing the group, to show that they're up to the job of managing their new department. Like taking on too much right away, this can lead to serious problems. In this episode, we will discuss ways to successfully avoid the potential pitfalls in taking on a complicated assignment too quickly. Hi, I'm Rick Kendall.
And I'm Fred Ball.
Welcome to Management Mastery. The purpose of these podcasts is to share what each of us has learned about good and bad management in our combined over 40 years of experience, both as managers and executive coaches. During that time, we've coached managers at every level in companies from Fortune 100s to brand new startups in all major businesses, including nonprofits, government, and education. So whether you're just starting in your first management position or are an experienced manager looking to strengthen your management skills, we know our podcast will be valuable to you.
When a manager takes over a department, either through promotion, transfer, or being hired into the company, they often find the previous manager has left behind a serious yet unaddressed problem or assignment. Sometimes this problem was instrumental in the former manager leaving the position. In any case, the new manager will feel pressure to immediately take on this assignment, both internal pressure from the desire to show to their boss and staff that they're up to the challenge, and external pressure from their boss or others to get it addressed.
Yeah, but whatever the nature of the pressure, it's important that the new manager take the time to fully understand the problem and its complexities before taking any major steps to address it. The manager should first meet with their boss to get as much detail on the issue as possible. And you also want to find out what, in the boss's opinion, has prevented the resolution of the issue so far. What's been tried or at least discussed, and why was it rejected or failed? And you also want the boss's advice on what they see as the best way to attack the problem.
Well, that's true, and once you've gotten as much input from the boss as you can, it's time to meet with any staff who may have already been working on the assignment. If possible, try to meet each one separately so you're sure to be getting each person's assessment of the problem, including what's already been tried, what, if any, failures or setbacks there have been, and each staff person's perception of the causes of any such past problems. Probe staff for any ideas they have for addressing the assignment, even if their ideas have been rejected in the past. If they were rejected, try to find out why. Remember, you want to create an atmosphere where there are no bad suggestions at any time.
And you may also want to meet with anyone outside the department who may be involved with the matter, especially anyone who will be potentially impacted by the outcome of the project. Understanding the issue from their perspective is essential to a positive outcome. Also probe for what they see as any critical issues in dealing with the problem, and especially try to find out what's been tried and not successful, and any suggestions they have for moving forward and so forth.
I think that's an important point, and one that is easy to forget, to get to the people who are outside the department but are involved in one way or another.
Oh yeah. Some of my early mistakes as a manager was not consulting with the end user or client. Sometimes it's a client, sometimes it's another department. But yeah, and not understanding the problem from their perspective can lead you down the wrong path. That's for sure.
Agreed. During this process, you may be tempted to leap to a solution, either one you already had in mind or that comes to you during your discussions. You may also feel that as the new boss, you need to present a solution in order to prove your ability as the boss. You should fight this temptation. even if you end up going with the solution you had in mind all along, you'll learn a great deal about your staff, your boss, and the place of your department within the larger organization. Hopefully, in this process, you're also getting a clearer idea of what the overall priorities of the department should be.
Very often what makes an assignment complex is that at its core, it involves getting people, sometimes a department, but sometimes the entire company, to change a behavior or a process that's relevant to how they do their jobs. This may be having to use a new piece of equipment or computer software or just a new method of doing a key part of their job. In any case, as we've said in other episodes, people generally don't like change, especially if it affects how they do their jobs.
That reminds me of a coaching case I had with a senior IT professional who had the job of completely changing the operating system. They had to put a plan together initially, and then they had to manage through that process. They had to find the large software company who developed the software, and then get from that point to a company that helped them to implement. But all the way along, the head of IT had to keep in mind that this was going to cause so many problems down the line as far as people needing to make changes in the way that they did things. And she knew that things would be better, but she also knew along the way that there were going to be all kinds of issues that came up, many of which had to do with people not wanting to accept change, even if the ultimate outcome was going to be better. So she had meetings with people. She had committees that she would put together so that she could talk things through ahead of time. She had someone who was in charge of training, and then she had to take the process step by step in order to work her way through it. Ultimately, it was very successful.
Well, yeah, I mean, you just think about how in your own life you feel when a computer program or an app on your phone that you use a lot has a, quote, update. And suddenly how you did something doesn't work anymore, and you had to change. Overall, the update may have been good for you, gave you better features, solved an annoying problem or whatever, but still having to change something you were used to doing was annoying. And if it's something you're doing in your job every day, you can multiply that, that's for sure.
That's right, and sometimes people get frustrated with the changes. I'm one of them.
Make that two.
This is why it is so important that people who are going to be impacted by the change understand why it is happening and how the change will hopefully benefit them. If possible, it is important that staff have the ability to influence how the change is implemented. Their suggestions as well as their objections, if any, need to be heard and respected and addressed where possible. If at all possible, input from the affected staff on how to implement the change can go a long way to smoothing out the transition. It is important to keep in mind, however, that when you get input from people, you have to be sure to follow up by either implementing their suggestions or explaining clearly why their suggestion was not implemented. To ask for input and then ignore it with no explanation can be far worse for morale and cooperation than not asking for it at all.
Boy, that is true. You got to involve people all the way along. And sometimes there can be more than one approach to solving a problem, especially if multiple staff members have been involved in working on the problem in the past. You may find a range of ideas about how to best address it. And this is one reason to talk to these staff individually so that they feel free to express their own points of view. A lot of times in a group, people will just clam up and you don't hear from them. And out of this may come suggestions for more than one potentially viable approach to the problem. And if they seem equally viable, then give the advocates for each time to flesh out their solutions and then present them to the group to evaluate. So everybody feels that they've had input into the solution. If resources permit, you may be able to have some work done on each towards to evaluate which approach is the most viable. And this approach might not only produce a better solution, but will definitely show respect to the staff advocating the different positions.
Then as you go through that process, ultimately when the decision's made, it is important to meet face-to-face with staff and explain why the decision was made, how roles and various job functions will need to change, and answer questions and concerns. Continuing communication with frontline workers will be essential to understand the successes or failures of the approach.
I have a great example of where that wasn't done. In this company, this is a number of years ago, went from one hardware approach to their data issues to another. And the head of IT adopted a piece of hardware that would go on everybody's desk, but was made by a company at that time, was going through a lot of turmoil, was on the verge of bankruptcy, and he caught a lot of flack for why did he go with this sort of, less than stellar piece of equipment in everybody's point of view, rather than the other 800-pound gorilla in the equipment realm. And he never really explained that, and people were upset. Why did he pick this company on the verge of bankruptcy when there's one of the leading companies has a solution just as good? And it wasn't until, a year or two later, I was with him. We were going somewhere in the car, and I said, gee, why did you pick that? I said, I liked it. It was, I thought it was a good choice, but I never understood why, and a lot of people didn't. He said, because the equipment I picked was very intuitive in terms of the user interface. So you could, as soon as you turned it on, you knew what you had to do and how to make it work. He said, the other one wasn't. And he said, in order to put that, I had a mandate to put one of those terminals on everybody's desk within a year. He said, if I had to train every staff person on how to use it, I never would have made my goal. With the other one, it was intuitive. I didn't have to train anybody, and they figured it out. And he was absolutely right. But he never explained that up front and got a lot of pushback because of it.
That's a good example of why he would have saved himself a lot of grief had he taken the time to explain that to people at the time.
Absolutely.
Once again, prioritizing and outstanding upfront planning will help the manager to rally staff to the proper issue or issues and show staff that the manager is in it for the good of the organization.
In this episode, we've discussed approaching a major assignment early in your new manager role. In approaching such an assignment, it's critical to listen not only to your boss, but also to any of your staff who are involved in its completion, as well as those outside of your department who may have a connection to it. This will provide you with valuable learning beyond the assignment itself. It's also important that all staff who may be impacted by any change the solution may involve are consulted about the impact in order to keep its impact on them to a minimum. We hope you have found this podcast useful and will come back again for more management mastery. If you have any comments about this or any of our episodes, or would like to find out more about our other services, including one-on-one coaching and group seminars for managers, visit our website at careercoachclass.com. Thanks for listening.